Oh, this Princess Peach, she's so kind. Who's the actress that plays her in real life? Hey, Bowser, let's never, ever, ever mess with the Mushroom Kingdom in Mario ever again. Yeah, let's leave Furiosa alone. Yeah. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today I'm giving you my spoiler-free thoughts on Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Thanks so much to Warner Brothers Pictures for giving me the chance to watch this at my local AMC and IMAX. And let me tell y'all, if you can catch this in an IMAX, you need to. While it's not shot in that 1:4:3:1 ratio, at least it wasn't screened that way for us, let me tell you, it looks beautiful on the biggest screen possible. And you're probably wondering, where the heck did I get this shirt? Well, I stole it off one of the war boys at my screening, but that's neither here nor there. The film itself releases on May 24th, so by the time you're watching this, it's in theaters, and it's directed by George Miller, who did the first 4 Mad Max films, and the cast is stacked. It involves Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa, Chris Hemsworth as Dr. Dementus, and Tom Burke as Praetorian Jack. Now, the premise of the movie is relatively simple, but you're going to need a little bit of context, so I recommend watching Fury Road. So if you know about Fury Road, you know about this movie. But if you don't, let me catch you up a little bit. In Fury Road, we got introduced to Imperator Furiosa, but George Miller said we need a prequel movie about the origin story of this Furiosa before her encounter with Max and before, well, what she did in Fury Road. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't watched it, so if you haven't watched Fury Road, please do so. And honestly, you don't really 100% need that context, but it helps to make Furiosa a very enjoyable experience. There are some cool callbacks, some nice cameos, and yes, we do get an Immortan Joe in this movie, and the actor who plays him does a really good job at honoring the legend who once played Immortan Joe as well. Now, if you already saw my socials, I'm already over the moon for this movie. It is excellent, it's a great time, but now I want to dive into my positives to get this review started off on the right foot, because for as action-packed and as epic as Fury Road is, Furiosa is narratively as strong. So if you were wondering, where the heck is the story in Fury Road? It's just cars going boom, bang, boom. No, in Furiosa, you get the story you were hoping for, and I would also argue that Fury Road had a lot of great visual storytelling, but Furiosa is heavy on story. There are 5 acts, at least to my remembrance and my knowledge. There are 5 acts in Furiosa, and each of them has a good amount of importance for the origin story of Furiosa. And I loved how this is a good example of an origin story done right. I was completely bought into Furiosa as a child, and then her growing into a warrior. The pacing for me was incredibly solid, and like I mentioned, there was a good deal of importance placed on each story beat that made me feel like, oh, well, George Miller respects the audience and their patience. Because yes, this movie is 2.5 hours long, so it's a lengthy film. But at no point did I feel the runtime. Yes, of course, I was a little tired because our screening started late, but for the most part, the film itself is not skipping a beat. And even though this is a movie about Furiosa, I do feel like Dementus also got enough development to make me care about him, and for better or for worse, because he was kind of a bad character, but not bad in terms of quality. And I want to continue to brag on George Miller a bit. We know him. We all understand that the man has a wide variety of range as a director, from Mad Max to Happy Feet. George Miller can do a lot of things, and it just proves in Furiosa, and again he continues to prove that the Wasteland is his baby and he knows this world best. As someone who adores Beyond Thunderdome for its world building, there's almost an equal sense of world building in Furiosa that I absolutely loved. The set pieces are incredibly unique as well. I thought that everything was very well done. The production design, the costume design. Technically speaking, this movie, in almost every category, knocks it out of the park. And George Miller does a nice job wrapping it all together with the action. I never lost track of what was happening on screen, and that is a huge plus, especially when we get our very first Fury Road sequence. I got a little nervous there. I was thinking, oh, okay, there's a lot happening, and I'm wondering if maybe this is going to be a little overwhelming in the worst way, but instead, it worked. And was there a lot happening? Absolutely. But George Miller, again, does different things. There's like little nuances to the way he directs every Mad Max film that differentiates every film one from another. Nothing felt samey as Fury Road. I felt like there was a lot that Furiosa did, and it helped it stand on its own. And even though Furiosa doesn't speak very often in this movie, man, George Miller allows those moments to feel incredibly breathtaking in a way, because there are times where Furiosa will speak and I am totally captivated. And it's basically because of the importance of dialogue. Now, George Miller has spoken about this in interviews prior to Furiosa hitting theaters, but less is more with Furiosa in the best way possible, because too much dialogue, it might feel over expository, and we don't want that, and we don't get that in Furiosa. So every time she did speak, there was a, oh, I gotta log in. What is she saying? Oh yeah, that makes sense. Like every word, you're hanging on every vowel and syllable, and it's incredible. So George Miller did a good job of building up to that, and by the end of the movie, I was so happy. And shout out to the action and stunt coordinators on this movie, because the way that they were able to direct every movement, it just really made everything matter. And honestly, there wasn't a single instance, a single frame where I'm like, somebody fell off when they shouldn't have, or that didn't look right. No, everything was intentional, purposeful, and it added layers to this movie. I'm still thinking about these action set pieces at the Bullet Farm, at Oil Town, or Gas Town, excuse me, and I just want to see it again, because I know there are things I've missed, but I want to continue to watch it to pick out all the stuff that's happening in the background. And then you have the acting, and let me tell you, this movie was bound to either succeed or fail, because a lot of it rested on the laurels of its leads. And we got to start with Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa. She's great, okay? I know a lot of people were saying, some of the early reactions, oh, she's no Charlize Theron, but nobody is Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron is Charlize Theron. She's excellent in Fury Road, but here, Anya Taylor-Joy sells me on the character of Furiosa big time. She is a wonderful actor, as we know, and has range, and here, there were so many moments where she's saying a lot with her eyes, and nothing with her mouth, but it worked for me because it filled in the gaps. So I loved how she was able to bottle up that aggression, the fact that she was able to sometimes play it cool, and she was funny. Anya Taylor-Joy has a lot to offer in Hollywood right now, and Furiosa is one of her best performances yet. It really is. And of course, you have Chris Hemsworth himself as Dr. Dementus, a character that is living up to his name, incredibly demented. He's the leader of bikedom, I think is what they say at one point, like kingdom but with bikes. Let me tell you, him and his motorcycle gang, each vehicle is really unique, but Dr. Dementus has this like chariot bike that just cracked me up every time. But back to the acting. Chris Hemsworth, man oh man, I knew he was more than just Thor, and he just proves it again in this movie. I love how he was able to, with as bad of a character in terms of like the morals of the character as Dr. Dementus is, there are some instances where Chris Hemsworth kind of sells me on a softer side of Dementus, and I thought that would never be possible, but it's because of Chris Hemsworth and what he was able to convey on screen that made me feel something at one small point for Dementus, and I thought that came very late in the movie, but it still was very effective. So I love what Chris Hemsworth did as well. Of course, this is Anya Taylor-Joy's vehicle, and it's not Chris Hemsworth's, but Chris Hemsworth does an incredible job as well. Now, there is a third actor, and I know I mentioned him at the beginning of the video, but Tom Burke as Praetorian Jack. I mean, to be honest, total surprise for me, because I didn't think that Tom Burke was going to deliver the goods, but the man brought a lot of punch to this role. And I know he is, the one who drives the oil rig on the Fury Road, and he's got these records, the war boys revere him, but it's the way the sincerity of the character bleeds through with Furiosa that works so well. They have some really good moments. I say intimate, not physically, but I mean emotionally. And oh my gosh, it adds a very soft layer to this movie. In the midst of the chaos, in the midst of Immortan Joe and Dr. Dementus facing off, Praetorian Jack and Furiosa's chemistry on screen was incredible, and that's due in large part to Tom Burke and Anya Taylor-Joy. So I love their moments together, and it's really going to be something on rewatch that I think gets even better for me. And I have to say the cinematography here was actually really good, and I was surprised because if you're like me, you probably didn't think too much of it in the trailer. Yeah guys, I won't lie, the trailer itself wasn't selling me too much on Furiosa, but what's really cool is once I sat down, it feels like they went through something in post-production and the movie was refined because it looked beautiful, the lighting was awesome, the scale of this film surprised me because a lot of that VFX in the trailer again didn't work well, but wow, I'm pleasantly surprised that I was really bought into this world, and it felt like they filmed a lot of this on location as well. So they were saving, I would say, the best for the final product. So the cinematography was good, and I also feel like they were able to nail most of the VFX. I don't say all, because that's maybe a little bit of the negatives as well, but the VFX is better than you think it will be. However, it isn't great, and it's one of the two things that I think kind of bogs down the film just a little bit. So maybe this is now a good time to transition into the negatives. There aren't many because I do love this movie, but one of them again is the VFX. At times it's really noticeable. In other moments it's not, and I would say in most moments it's not terrible. It's not great, but it's passable enough to where you're still locked into the world. But there's a little bit of immersion broken at times when there's a lack of VFX. And then the second thing that I didn't like too much about this movie, a lack of score. Tom Hulkenberg scored Fury Road and it was incredible. It was a main character. But here, it's more of a supporting act. It's not always a bad thing when a score isn't overt, but it's too subtle in Furiosa. When we get to the Fury Road sequence for the very first time in this film, all the action is great, the stunt work is awesome, the acting is wonderful, cinematography and the way shots are framed, amazing. But it's missing the cherry on top to really bring it together and make it an A+ moment for me, and that is the score. You hear it, but it is not very noticeable, and at times I almost thought my ears are still working, right, because I hear no music. So I don't love it, and no, we are not getting a dude playing guitar all the time like we were in Fury Road, but we don't need that, and I wasn't expecting that. I just was expecting a little bit more oomph from the music, and the VFX again, not always great. So those two things hold this movie back from being a 5 out of 5, but those are the only two drawbacks to this film, because I walked out of this absolutely loving it. So overall, you guys, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. It proves why George Miller is the only filmmaker that could possibly pull off an origin story like this. It's wildly successful, and in an age where we do get a lot of origin stories and spin-off films, they're more miss than hit. But George Miller, his origin story, the prequel to Fury Road, it works incredibly well, and it should be the blueprint for how you can pull off such a successful origin story. You focus on the character, give them an equal amount of importance, and it'll work. The storytelling is seamless. The screenplay was wonderful. I loved the acting, like I just mentioned, and yes guys, it is a very gripping story. I was bought in. This world, I was into it, right? Now, thank God I'm not in the Wasteland, but man, it was so fun, but also sincere. And I think that's what I love so much about Furiosa, is that everyone's going to look at this and be like, man, this is metal, I love it. But I came away thinking, wow, I kind of feel touched by this movie. And that's really cool. So if I even had to rate this out of 5 stars, it's a 4.5 out of 5. You need to see this. Go see it in IMAX. I want to see it again in my local IMAX theater, where they do have a 1:4:3:1 screen, right? So maybe they'll kind of mess with the aspect ratio a little, but I'm looking forward to seeing it there. That sound is going to be loud. Gotta bring earplugs. But yes, guys, so Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga is incredible. I loved it, and I cannot wait for you guys to see it. But when you do, let me know down below in the comments exactly what you think. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like this video for more reviews, and I cannot wait to be back because summer movie season's in full swing, and your boy's gonna be busy. Very busy. Alrighty, well again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.